As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. In this episode, we're going to change things up a little bit. Rather than having an outside expert to call on, I will be answering your questions about my path to becoming a reluctant prepper.
Our third question for making of a reluctant prepper comes from Jason S., who asks, could you explain the specific preparedness steps you have personally taken so far and what your priorities are to do next?
The next thing that we've talked about some in the past is gold and silver. Our family was significantly exposed due to risks of most of our nest egg being in stocks or in money market equivalent, cash equivalent funds, or in U.S. savings bonds and savings accounts. And all of those, as we talked about in previous episodes, and our guests have mentioned that before, and I think I'm going to repeat one of the lessons that I know our guest Ann Barnhart talks. She walks through step by step all the different types of places you can put your money and how there are inherent risks built into the system, because the institutions where you're putting your money have absolutely a profit motive in mind. So they take your money and they turn around and invest it in more risky things on the backside than you would believe. And once you find out about how much risk is really being assumed by your investments, you realize you're placing your family at, that's what we realized, we were placing our family at unacceptable risk by trusting those systems and institutions to guard our nest eggs. So what we did was when I changed employers and I had to leave my old 401k, the real option was to roll it over into an IRA, which we did, but I then rolled that IRA into a precious metals IRA. There's a number of reputable custodians. You can look up online precious metals IRA and you'll find we happen to use Sterling Trust, but there's any number of them out there. And you can set up an account. It's just like a regular IRA, but instead of investing in stocks and bonds, you're just basically going to invest in precious metals, physical, real, not paper equivalents, not contracts or anything, but real bars of metal that are going to get shipped from your metal supplier to your custodian and be held in a vault for you and be your IRA. And the downside of that is that, number one, you have to pay the custodian to store it in their vault. They obviously have to, pay. They have costs associated with maintaining those physical vaults. They've got guards to pay and everything like that, utilities, etc. So there is an annual cost, and you have to be very careful in. Well, I won't go into too much detail here. Just enough to say that we picked a custodian. We had the precious metals stored there. Then I saw two articles in the same week about different custodians where people had not been able to take delivery or get their hands on their precious metals when the time came.
So the next related decision of where to store your precious metals is a very personal and private decision, and it's one that no one can make for you, and it's one that no one can make completely right or wrong. There's just trade-offs you have to consider. Some of the most important considerations that we had to look at were that in custodial storage, you are eligible for the tax-deferred IRA, precious metals IRA rules under the IRS. And you also have 7x24 guarded storage. You've got a secure facility where they've got a highly secure storage of your metals. There were a couple of articles that I did see where people had tried to redeem their bullion from a custodian and did not get them back. So as with anything, whether it's banks or other institutions, you have to consider that there's counterparty risk where you are trusting that other party, and in the case of a collapse situation or in the case of any kind of a breakdown, that would be an additional risk. However, if you take the metals into your own possession, there's a flip side consideration. You have much more control and immediate access and direct hands-on possession of those. However, then you've got to look to how will you secure those metals if you take them in your own possession, whether it's in a safe or any caches, other places that you could conceal those. And there are some great articles on goldsilver.com on how to create concealed locations if you want to go with that option. It's something that each person has to weigh carefully for themselves. There's no one right answer, and it's one that we had to make our own personal decision on. Everyone here will have to make their own personal decision on how they want to store their metals.
We did. We spread ourselves across U.S. Silver Eagles and Golden Eagles, initially both because those are qualified and accepted for IRA storage, but I also chose those because we wanted something that in a hard time situation would be universally recognized and accepted and understood. There's all kinds of brands that some people say, gee, you can save money by buying, you know, generic gold or silver rounds or bars, or that sort of thing. But I recall a situation where we were on vacation in Mexico and you had to pay to use the public restroom there, and they wanted a couple of quarters, and instead of having U.S. quarters, I had a 50-cent piece, and I showed it to the person, and they wouldn't take it. They would not accept it because they didn't recognize it. To them, it was just funny money. It wasn't what they were used to or trained to look for, so to them it wasn't real. And I do not want to end up in a situation, if there was an urgent, you know, emergency or any kind of a collapse or whatever, social breakdown of any kind, where barter was necessary or where precious metals were more the going currency than U.S. dollars. I would not want to have in my possession something that said, you know, some unrecognized source that people wouldn't trust. So in that, I think trust is key, and when trust in the system has broken down, I wanted that to be the least of my worries. Also along that same line was junk silver. So we purchased a significant quantity of junk silver, and what that means is United States dimes and quarters and 50-cent pieces that are 1964 or older, because all of those contained 90% silver. You can also get, I believe it's 1968 half dollars that were 40% silver, but primarily when people say junk silver, they're talking about 1964 or older U.S. dimes, quarters, and half dollars. So we have a large, and that you can purchase that from any number of sources. Just go search junk silver online, or go to your local coins shop and ask for junk silver, and they know what you mean. So that the idea being that those are smaller pieces. So if there's some small scale bartering that we would need to do for foodstuffs or, you know, tools or whatever fuel that we might need to do in a situation, it's really handy because they're very small. Like the dimes, for example, old dimes are real small. But also, again, there's the recognition factor and the trust factor that people have seen these all their lives. A lot of people grew up back when that stuff was real money, so our currency, and they recognized that they know what it looks like, they know what it feels like. You can drop it on a table and you hear this ringing sound of the silver rather than the clackety sound of the new fake metal that we have in our current currency. So those are what we put a lot of our money in, was in precious metals. And the next thing, again, how do you protect all this stuff? So a big focus for us was home protection. So first, looking at our physical security and habitat. Again, from a livability standpoint, we live in an area of the country where all of the houses have sump pumps in their basement because there's a high groundwater table here. And if you think about it, if the sump pumps run on electricity and the electricity goes out due to a storm or whatever, then you're vulnerable to groundwater coming into your living space, and that's just terrible. I mean, every year they say that more people get illnesses or deaths from floods than from almost all other combinations of natural disasters put together. So lightning and hurricanes and all that other stuff. It's flooding that accompanies any of those things that's actually the real major scale danger to human health and life. So what we did as soon as purchasing this home, which had an electric sump pump, was we added a secondary backup sump pump, which is powered by water pressure. So the city water pressure, if the primary sump pump fails and the float goes high and it goes up to a second float, which will trip in the backup sump pump, which is basically an ejector system, which is it's a pump, but it's powered by city water pressure, so it would eject both the amount of city water that it uses plus it would drain the sump at the same time. We've tested that. It's really pretty interesting. You unplug the primary electric sump pump and you just, during a rainstorm, when it's normally cycling on and off, on and off, on and off, and it doesn't cycle anymore because you unplugged it, and sure enough, within about 2 or 3 minutes, the water-powered sump pump kicks in and empties the sump to keep your house dry. So that's one step you can take. It's not perfect, but it is reasonable to expect that even if electricity goes out, the city water isn't necessarily going to go out at the same time, because that's less likely. Another thing we did was changed out all of our locks in the house when we built the house. That's a pretty common practice for most people, but specifically used very high quality, big name deadbolts. We went with the Schlage brand, but you can just make sure that you go with a long throw, a pick-proof deadbolt lock on all your doors. We had a guest on recently, Larry Yatch from Sealed Mindset, retired Navy SEAL, saying you should actually put deadbolts and solid wood doors and solid wood frames on all the bedrooms in your house. We haven't gone that far yet, but we do have them on the exterior, all the exterior doors of the house. We also activated the home security system, which was present in our home but had been left to go dormant or not enabled when we purchased the house, and activated that security system, had it all checked out and tested, and also added a cellular link in addition to the regular phone link. So even if someone were to break into the home and cut the phone lines, there's still a battery backup, there's still a cellular link back to the main monitoring station in case of a break-in. And firearms for home protection, we never had those in the past, but we either inherited from family members or purchased a number of different types of firearms, and are looking to add some more types based on interviews recently with the Navy SEAL consultant. So make sure you check out that interview as well. We stocked up ammo, as everybody knows, who's been trying or paying attention to the situation on so-called gun control, or I guess gun control in our nation, knows that ammunition has been in critical short supply for the past several years. So we found various suppliers. We kept calling local sporting goods stores. I would call them almost daily, sometimes multiple times per day, find out when the next trucks are coming in, when they expect it, when they have it in stock, and go in and purchase as much as I could. Also, there are online suppliers. The one that we use the most is called bulkammo.com. So if we were able to obtain large quantities of different calibers of ammo and store those as well. It's a very interesting, when you talk about items which are worth stockpiling, ammo is really high on the list. You can't eat it, but it could be used to hunt if you needed to, so you could obtain food. It's a tool that could potentially be used for obtaining food in a pinch, but also it has almost infinite shelf life. It's recognized of high value in times of trouble, and it's something that could be very well used for bartering and that sort of thing. And also that if times get tough, it's something that's very difficult to come by on your own. You could raise a garden, but you can't really easily raise your own ammo if you don't have it. Some people have reloading capability, but really the basics is it's something that you want to not have in short supply if you needed it. So the other thing we've done is obtain firearm safety training, including range training for family members, and the next up on that list for us will be a concealed carry weapons class. Those are available through various providers nearby, and that would grant you then the ability, by registering with your local sheriff, to be able to carry a weapon wherever you go, unless it's explicitly forbidden by the particular building that you're going into. But most places still don't prohibit that, and it allows you to increase your personal safety. And again, our Navy SEAL consultant said he carries a sidearm wherever he goes that he can. And just a word on the sheriff. We had our local county sheriff visit and give a informational talk recently. And one of the interesting points that he made, he asked, the first thing he said to the audience was, "Who do I work for?" And everybody just stopped and didn't know what to answer. And he says, "I do not work for the governor. I do not work for the mayor. I do not work for any county commissioner." He says, "I work for the people." So when you really think about whether or not you put your trust in the system, or whether the political machinery of our country is still serving the people, the way the Constitution called it to, the government only should exist to ensure the freedom and liberty of its people, to serve the people. That's probably the best example we have left, is the county sheriffs. They are elected by the people, and they are reportable and accountable to the people. Their job is to preserve the peace in their county, and they are not beholden to the governor or any other city planner or city manager or a mayor, that sort of thing. So you can get a lot of good information on how to keep yourself and your family safe from your county sheriff. So I think that they're one of the opportunities we still have left for someone to rely on who has a good chance of still being in a constitutionally appropriate role to help out the individuals. The next steps for us on home protection will be a lot of the recommendations that our Navy SEAL guest recommended, such as tactical flashlights for non-lethal weapons, knives. We have a family member now who just purchased one of the types of knives with these wave self-opening feature that our Navy SEAL recommended. Also, the Glock handguns that the Navy SEAL recommended, and quick access gun safes in multiple parts of the house. So those are on our next up list. Another thing we took on was training and fitness. So in addition, I mentioned to the training of the range days with our firearm safety training, was we purchased home gym equipment and established a fairly regular home exercise routine to try to build up our strength, and we're now adjusting more towards what can we do for more functional fitness in not just typical athletic type fitness. And next up will be self-defense training. So again, our Navy SEAL recommended very practical or functional self-defense training, and that in times of crisis you don't have time to think things through, and so you need to turn the tables on any possible attacker by going into auto mode through having done sufficient training. So that's what we're starting to do, is to start to get some information from either from online videos or other sources on what types of practical self-defense training we should be doing, and starting that process. And next up is energy, electricity, and fuel. We are very dependent currently on outside energy sources to keep our family heated and or cooled and lighted and our food preserved. So the first thing we did in the past was we got a inverter attachment for our car, so that we could provide house power from our car. So in a pinch, we bought a bunch of spare gasoline cans, a lot of these 5-gallon gas cans for gas, and in the process of rotating that from season to season, using that up and getting fresh gas and the change of the seasons and using it up in the vehicles. But keeping a rotating stock of that spare gasoline, and then having the vehicles that could run and generate power, but then having an inverter that you can clamp onto your car battery and generate house power. So the inverter we purchased is sufficient to size to run our refrigerator, freezer, and that's the next step for us. Will be a backup natural gas generator to automatically, if we were to lose house power, would be to automatically switch over to natural gas or LP propane to provide electricity, and not to do maybe everything that we would normally have for comfortable living, but at least the basics, which for me in the winter means, so that my family doesn't freeze and our pipes don't freeze, means I need something that can run the furnace fan. It means something that can run hopefully our electric sump pump, but also our freezer, refrigerator to keep our food fresh, our perishable food from spoiling. And then beyond that, we'll evaluate the sizing of that. And I think I'm going to make a whole nother video just on telling the story and giving you a glimpse step by step as we go through getting the backup generator installed and how the sizing that we choose. But the next prioritized list of load that we might size that for would be able to handle possibly our gas dryer, which is basically just in the tumbling and the fan of the dryer, or possibly the air conditioning. We'll see. I'm expecting that the prices will go much higher as the capacity gets really big. So rather than thinking we have to get one that can do everything, I think we're going to go in a very prioritized list, with the furnace, fan being first off of priority, and the refrigerator, freezer being the second priority, and work from there. The other thing we're looking for future would be adding solar or wind power to help us out. And a key thing there is, do you have storage capacity, or can you use the power, or can you have net metering in your area so you can sell it back to the power company? Many areas of the country have net metering, some don't. I will need to learn more about it, and so we'll keep you informed as we learn more about if we can add, we definitely can add solar and wind power, but how we will be able to utilize the energy that comes off from that, whether we have net metering here that we could sell it back to the power company if we're not using it, etc. So that's a quick rundown of some of the steps that we've taken and some of the next ones up, and I will definitely follow up with additional details on any of those topics where we're going to take additional steps. So thank you very much, everyone. We're all in this together. Please add comments below of specific bullet lists of steps that you've taken for your family, or ones that are up next for you. We can encourage each other along the way. And thank you very much for being here on Reluctant Preppers, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.